Broadcasting live from SHRM 2022 at the New Orleans Convention Center, it's time for Workplace MVP, brought to you by R3 Continuum, a global leader in helping workplaces thrive during disruptive times. Now, here's your host.
Hey everyone, your host Jamie Gassmann here at the SHRM 2022 exhibit hall, and I am in our show sponsor R3 Continuum's booth, and joining me is Greg Hawks.
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Greg.
It is a pleasure to be here. I love your booth setup. The colors are fabulous. Location is delightful. People are all over the place. Thanks for letting me sit down.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you sat down, and I love your energy.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for the compliment on the booth.
Yeah,
you work so hard to design those,
Absolutely.
so I
This
appreciate
is a great
that.
color.
Yes,
It really
yes,
is.
it's inviting.
Yeah, it's distinct, and I love green, but it's not. It's
like a teal-y,
It's a teal, but it's a
minty.
little. It's minty. It's a
Yes.
lovely minty flavor.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So I'm really excited you sat down. So I know you own your own agency.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about what your agency does and what you do for HR leaders.
Well, for HR leaders, we work in culture. That's what we do. So we have I've got myself and two other folks on our team that are culture specialists. So we do a lot of speaking. So I do a lot of keynote speaking at organization events, at HR conferences, state conferences around the nation, and then we serve some consultancy around how they're shaping an ownership culture. So our mission is shaping environments where everyone gets to contribute their best daily. So we're really focused on this idea of how do we cause people to get better every day.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we kind of metrics our best. How are you the best version of you? That's what people talk about. I'm like, today is it, baby. You don't get any better than this because today is last year's future. And so everybody's like, I've got this idea of what I'm going to be. And so we really work with leaders and teams on really shaping the environments where people can bring their best daily.
Yeah, and I got to imagine with the change in work environments across the country, where you've got a hybrid or you've got full remote work or they're bringing people back and there's that hesitation. Talk to me about how has culture evolved in organizations?
Ooh, here's what I have found with culture and organizations that immediately shifted to the remote workforce that didn't have it before is that in that initial season, it magnified who they already were. So the organizations had cultures that were literally people first. The language that people use about we respect our people, we care for our people, in COVID magnified it. So I've got a client in Atlanta when they sent everybody home and immediately they replicated their desk environment at home in both places, and they said, whenever we come back, you'll have your stuff here and you'll have your stuff there, and we'll just work with whatever. They just immediately, whereas other people were like stingy or they just didn't care. It was all about it. They just didn't have it in their culture that they really did respond to challenges that kept their people first, if you will. And so in the initial season, I'd say the first year or so, it really magnified it. Now that we've been through the transformation of it, now what we see is people who really value innovation, in the thoughtfulness of always keeping their people first, is how they're structuring their conversations, because culture isn't within a building anyhow, right? Like when people think of culture not in a workplace, they think of Paris, they think of New York City, they think of Minneapolis. Every location has a culture.
Totally.
And it's not based on what happens inside of a building. It's based on the traditions and the communication and the look. There's so many elements that create culture for a people group. And so just because people are distributed, it doesn't make it more difficult if those values are entrenched in the hearts and minds of people. And so the challenge leaders are having is they're so used to having a physical structure to fashion that in, that now being mindful of whether we're Zooming or we're just having phone calls more, or everybody's just distributed and we're no longer hiring in a geographical location, we're hiring all over the nation is now our place, and people don't have to move. It's how do we instill our heart? How do we instill our way of thinking? How do we instill the way we communicate? Because those things aren't contained in a building, but they really reflect a lot about who we are as an organization. I mean, really the values that we have. So that for me, the remote world has really magnified if people really align with their values. It's really exposed what the culture is because you can't lie about it. Like we see how people are as a collective in our teams or organizations in these companies, and so it's just not as well hidden as when everybody comes together and they got the words on the wall and this is what we're about, but didn't really have to play it out every day.
Yeah, so with that, like, exposure to the true identity or the true culture of the organization, do you think that for some that's contributed to that great resignation or that great reshuffle that we've experienced over the last year?
I've got a friend, Ben, who calls it the great reprioritization. Oh. He's like, it doesn't flow well, but it is that.
I keep hearing different names.
I know.
That's
There's tons. I mean, the resignation is the one that got it because that was the actual activity. I absolutely think so. And, there's a combination because people recognized that they weren't as cared for as maybe they thought they were. And they also recognized, I want to give my life every day in an organization, in a place, and with the people that my own personal values align with. And so that, I would definitely say it's exposure. People don't talk about it in that language, but what was exposed on who the company really is, what values really mattered, because us as people and as teams, because we're made of people, we act out of our beliefs. Like however anybody's acting, it's because there's a belief structure within their own internal value system. And so that plays out true in organizations. And so when that was revealed and keeps being revealed, honestly, it was a collective courageousness that was like, I just don't want to do this anymore in life.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on it. The exposure definitely did give people a sense of, at least I know, at least the level, playing field is level on how people really think about me here. Mm-hmm. And then what do I want to do with that? What's acceptable to me? What's not acceptable to me?
Yeah. And now I know you presented here at SHRM, and I heard your presentation was amazing.
Morning. So much fun. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of, they got me chained in the booth here, talking about work culture, right? No, I've got lots of interviews to do. Yeah. But no, so I heard your presentation went really, really well. Talk to us about what you presented on.
Oh, I did my ownership culture message because I've owned single family properties. So I do this idea of, kind of a comparison of because people use, as you know, they're like, we need people to buy in around here. We just need you to own it. And it's a very subjective idea. And I own single family properties. And so I talk about how renters perceive living in a home and how owners perceive it differently. And so I've got these 5 attributes, what an ownership spirit looks like, whether it's around commitment or increasing value or reach for responsibilities or being inclusive, and then valuing the whole house. And so I give HR professionals and really leaders in organizations some clarity on, if you want people to buy in, then be very specific about what that entails. And if you create a place, you shape the culture, you shape this environment where people can bring their best daily around what commitment looks like. Because here's what you find, people want to do a good job at work. People are fulfilled when they feel like they're succeeding. And when they don't feel like that, it's as much to do with the environment that they're doing it in, the leadership that's leading, and then their own sense of ability to do it. And oftentimes it seems to reflect so much on the individual instead of the culture that they're in. And so I'll talk about contribution because one of the characteristics is people who have an ownership spirit want to contribute. And yet oftentimes we create an environment where we say, we don't want to hear that. No. I say they'll crush your spirit. Then you go in, start out really eager and really excited, and then they just like squash your spirit, and they're like, fine, I'm not going to share anything more. I'm not going to pull. Right. And so all of a sudden, they want people to give their best, but their environment actually produces renters in the workplace instead of people with the spirit of ownership. And so that was a little bit what I talked about. I love this message. It gets good language for people. Everybody's owned or rented, understands that, and it just really gives a construct for organizations to think about what they're inviting their employees to bring and what that can look like in an organization.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some interesting kind of new approaches of thinking about that environment. So if there was like 1 or 2 key takeaways that you wanted that audience to leave with, what would they be?
There are several key takeaways, but one of my favorite things, because I talk about increasing value, and oftentimes people will say, well, I don't have access to a budget. I'm not in charge of anybody. And so the offering is, the way you increase value is through encouragement, that you can use free words to become more valuable and to cause others to feel valuable. And so I'll interact with somebody in the audience, and I'll say really positive, specific things to them and appreciate them in a way. And I don't know them, but I can assume I get to know them a little bit, what they're doing, and I'll just say them. And one of the takeaways is, people like people who like them.
Yes.
So I'll say it again because some people don't understand it. People like people who like them. So I'm always an advantage. Jamie, I like you. I start out liking you before I know you, not based on who you are, but based on who I am. And most leaders, most people go, I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to see what you're like. I'm going to figure you out. And then I don't know if I'll like you or not. And what that does is you're going to be more different than me than like me. And differences create distance. But if I start out saying, I like you, I start from the place of I already give that to us in a relationship, it creates this reciprocity that really engages people. And it's not so that you have people like each other. It's so that trust is accelerated. Because once we trust each other, then we can have really meaningful conversations and we can get right to the heart of things that oftentimes people dance around, even because they just have personality differences and they don't have the capacity within themselves to go, I choose to like you based on me, not based on you. And because of that, we're going to grow a better relationship. So that's one of them, to increase my value and your value in an organization.
Yeah, I love that.
I do too.
I actually felt that. And you're like, I like you. I'm like, oh,
Listen,
I like you too.
That's exactly what happens. It's
you instantly feel that.
You instantly feel that. And so I was down this, it's transformational. And literally just those words, when you say that to somebody, all their guard drops. It's this weird connection thing that happens. Yeah. Just what happened here.
It's like a human connection.
It's literally the best of the human connection.
Accepted.
Yes. And you can start that out, because most people are like, let me get a feel for you. Let me get to know you a little bit. And it's all defensive. It's all a defensive position. And when I start out liking you, I'm on the offense. I'm intentionally going to build rapport with you so we can really deal with things that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And so many leaders don't do that.
I love that. You're setting them up to bring their best selves to work, because they can bring themselves to work.
Yes.
That's so
exactly.
cool. How powerful.
It's potent.
Yeah.
It really is.
So if anybody wanted to learn more from you or just kind of get a little bit more information or kind of explore your agency,
that would be just fabulous. Yeah. I wish they would do that.
How do they get a hold of you?
They can go to hawksagency.com, HAWKS agency.com. Has all the information, has our little team on there, has video, all kinds of great resources on there. It's just a great website. So hawksagency.com. Thank you.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Good. I hope people benefit from it. Let me know how I can help you guys.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Workplace MVP. R3 Continuum is a proud sponsor of this show and is delighted to celebrate most valuable professionals who work diligently to secure safe workplaces where employees can thrive.